This little mini hip session is also a lesson. It's a lesson in active and passive stretching. So let's just start out with a traditional pose that you see in a lot of pre-workout exercises, and you also see it in yoga, and that is a butterfly pose. And generally speaking, we end up getting into it like so. This would be a passive stretch. I've gotten to a certain place with the assistance of my hands. Another passive stretch would be something I no longer do, but let's say I didn't have osteoporosis and I linked a strap around my legs and I curled my body over, trying to get stretch both in my back and up the back side of my legs with the assistance of the strap and the pulling of my arms. That would be a passive stretch as well. And sometimes I do a hip hinge stretch right here, but you can see I wouldn't be going as far. If I was holding on to my toes, that would be a passive stretch, pulling myself somewhere that I can't go on my own. So that's the key. When we do a passive stretch, we are actually bypassing all kinds of little muscles that stabilize us. And in the case of stretching at the hip, we are really bypassing a lot of muscles. So here I am moving my torso around and pulling my legs in. I'm bypassing a lot of small muscles, tendons, and ligaments that help keep my femur bone, the head of my big leg bone, centered in the hip socket. And we really know over time that lack of centration in your hip socket leads to a lot of issues down the line. So let's look at what I can do on my own, and then this would be an active stretch. I pull one leg in, I pull the other leg in, and this, as you can see, this is a further distance than where I can go if I give myself some assistance. So one more time, I bring one leg in, I bring the other leg in, and here I am. This is my active stretch. And maybe I'd press my knees out, but I would do it using my muscles. So I'm getting a lot of muscle activation. Now I know the first thing that you're probably going to say is, well, that's just not quite as enjoyable because you love that stretchy feeling. I totally get that. What I would recommend is that you use things like the psoas release or the iliacus release. Use those for your down regulation and that soothing feeling. And if you work on your active range of motion, active stretching, you're actually going to find more mobility and greater ease in the long run. One of the things that I do recommend if you are going to get into your active range of motion and then you don't want to be holding yourself up or pressing yourself down, I recommend getting blocks or pillows, and therefore you can allow yourself to relax in a place that your body can go on its own. So you can sort of combine active and passive stretching. Okay, so now that that lesson part is done, let's just work on some range of motion. So let's just see how it feels. We'll do the passive again. See how that feels. Sort of close your eyes and get in your mind's eye what you feel in your hip sockets. And then let's see what you feel when you come here on your own. I actually feel a lot more core engagement and a lot more hip flexor action and some stretching at the back of my bum. So that is my active. And I can open my legs out to here and then come back again. So now I've got a little exercise routine, and maybe before I do some hip strengthening work, I might just do this as a part of a warm-up. It's a little tiring, but what's interesting is that you'll find over time after doing things like this that you will have a greater range of motion, and eventually your legs will be coming in closer on your own. We can also take that same idea. Let's bring our legs together. Let's turn the legs out and open out. and then drag the legs back together again. Turn out, open out, go back to parallel, and come back. Now, if you find that it's really hard to sit here and that you're slumping, then I suggest going higher up on a block, or it's okay to use your arms in the back to just give yourself a little more ease in the core as you get used to this exercise. This is a beautiful, active range of motion stretch. Let's look at if this is really just too exhausting to keep your core upright. You're maybe not in a position yet to feel like you're ready for that, for your core is ready for that. Then what you can do is come onto the ground. So now I'm going to use my little blanket as a pillow, and we come down to the ground, and I can put my knees together and my heels together, and let's get into a neutral spine. So that's a tuck, that's an untuck, and I'll just find my way into a neutral spine. I'm going to try to keep that spine in neutral, and I can open my knees and close my knees. Feel how that feels versus opening and closing. Opening and pressing open, and then helping yourself come up. Then let's do it again, all on our own. And then let's make it even more powerful. Let's press our heels together. Do you feel your inner thighs really light up? And now this coming back is very much of an inner thigh workout, but we are also working on our range of motion without changing where the femur belongs. And I can grab these blocks, and after a little more work, maybe I would want to hold for a moment with some support. And you can do a little down regulating here. You can also do the same thing with internal and external rotation. Rotate out, open your legs, and drag them back in. Open and drag them back in. Another really cool thing to do, and I'm going to show it to you seated. You could do it lying on the floor as well. I just don't have quite the room to show it to you the way I would like to. So I'm going to come up on the block just to make myself a little higher off the floor, and then I'll show it to you all the way down on the floor. Is what if I amp this up and we go from here to here? Wow, that's a lot more work. Maybe you want your hands here, maybe you want your hands here, but we're lifting to put the legs where we want them. And oh yeah, I can't, and maybe we drag back. So let's lift out and then drag back. Lift out and drag back. Now I'll show it to you on the ground. Well, maybe, how about on my, it is nice to get your hamstrings, just a little bit of help with a little padding underneath. So I'm going to drag together, and now I lift out. And you can see my torso wants to get thrown back. Well, it doesn't want to, it just does. So if I keep myself really upright, my range of motion is even smaller because I'm not getting help from my pelvis. So this sometimes can be disappointing to me because I really can't get that wide, but it's awesome work. I know you feel tired afterwards, and it's a great time to take a little psoas release. So I don't have my big bolster with me, but let's do the iliacus release. So we come down to the ground, and this release is not a stretch. We're just actually allowing the muscles to sort of float back into the body, because we did use the hip flexors a lot. That can pull them forward a little bit. So you can take some time afterwards, and this is your down regulation time. And I'm going to follow this up with a little more of an exercise class using passive and active stretching.